Welcome all to this exciting first meeting of the Otago and Southland Regional Transport Committee, or workshop, should I say, not meeting, that's this afternoon. Thank you very much for your attendance. It's great to see some new faces and some old faces and some even older faces. Murray, I'm talking about you. Russell's online, can't see his face yet. This is, I think the boys, for those who've been here before, we run it as constructively and as quickly as we can, but we do it with a wee bit less formality than perhaps at other council levels. It is really important that we give each person time to make sure that we do understand. We don't let that regularly. An important part of this is to make sure that everyone gets to have a say about their patch, because that's how we'll learn and understand those issues best. This is we've got a few apologies today. I will go through, actually what I need to do is first get up here. Sorry. Tuia ki ronga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki wahu, tuia ki roto, tuia ki te here tangata, ka ronga te pou, ka ronga te ao, kamie, puie, taki. Welcome all, and thank you again. Now, the apologies today we've got from Christian Menzies, and then an apology from the second alternate, and the third alternate, Rob, is here. Thank you very much for your attendance today. Ria Bond, I don't think there's an alternate for Ria here. From Otago, an apology from Titus Nandu and Barry Stewart, Councillor Barry Stewart, and we've got an apology from Matt, my deputy, who is just arrived in Wyoming and is going to take a wee bit of time to settle in there, and he'll be joining us about 11:30. That's okay. Now, in order that we know each other, let's go around the table. I'll be doing those apologies again this afternoon, but I think it's helpful that people know who's in the room or not in the room as well. We could do this in so many ways, and some of us have already done it. Yeah. James got in there so quickly with his because he's very
terrified of what you'd say. So, yeah.
And I'm sorry, the AI didn't work. I went to do one. I looked up Stuart Duncan, who I know relatively well, and it was far too nice, so I gave up. This is all about being nice to people. I failed miserably. So we'll start with NZTA because that is the main funder and partner in 50% of the meeting. So why not start with James?
With not 50% of the votes. That's good. So we've got a koto, James Cagle. I'm the Director of Regional Relationships for NZTA for West Coast, Canterbury, Otago, Southland, and so I'm the representative on both RTCs of the agency. Nice to meet you.
Very good. We'll go to Southland now.
Yes, so Southland. So good morning, everyone. My name is Phil Morrison. I'm a second term councillor with Environment Southland. Currently deputy chair of Environment Southland. This will be my second triennium doing regional transport, and I've replaced Jeremy McPhail as the chairman of the Southland Regional Transport Committee.
Thank you. So I am going to do everyone as councillors first and then staff. Dunedin. Thank you for doing your bio, Steve.
Yeah, kia ora koutou, everyone. I did do my bio. If you've not read it, I'm Steve Walker, third term Dunedin City Councillor, replacing Jim O'Malley on this committee. If you've read the bio, you will know I do lots of mad sporty things, including biking. And if you see me limping today, it's because of that. So I have a torn meniscus, despite the fact that this weekend I managed to go to a rock festival up in Christchurch. I'm really keen on environmental issues. I'm involved in a lot of environmental groups around the city, including Dunedin Wildlife Hospital, Predator Free Dunedin. Very keen to learn how this works. I'm a quick learner, so hopefully this induction hits the nail on the head. Just said to James, I read through the stuff that was sent through. Two keywords that emanated for me were the word resilience. I've never seen it used so much in a document, and also the fact that we are pretty screwed when it comes to bridges. And worryingly, James has just showed me a diagram of how screwed we are. You want to talk to that later?
I will.
There's a really nice segue into Southland. Because bridges are their thing. Thanks, Rob.
Well, we got one button to press there. Yeah, as you can hear at the start, on the bottom of the barrel for Southland District today. Third best, but yeah, bridges certainly keep me awake at night. We've got 864 of them and 5,000 kilometres of road. So yeah, roading in general is a very big interest of mine that I didn't have
15 years ago before jumping into this local government thing. But yeah, no, it's great to be here, and yeah, it's great to be amongst all those people. Second term mayor, but also started at the community board many years ago and sort of worked my way down the ladder.
Welcome. There are many of us around the table who started on the community board level.
Join the club.
Yes. Going to one of the old timers of the committee, Bruce. I didn't say oldest, I just said old timers.
Thank you for your kindness. Bruce Graham, Peter District Council. I'm a 6th term councillor. Probably, I think I've done 2.5 terms on the RTC. Interest, I get told what my interests are, as most very people do. So I just tag along. I generally listen, think about it, and if someone else has said it, I'll just keep quiet. And that again comes from being married. So
It's only married men that think that way.
sorry.
It's only married men that think that way, just letting you know.
Oh, right. Yes, dear.
Stuart.
Yes, Stuart Duncan, Central Otago District Council. I too started on the community board in 2001. So I've been doing it for a while. So head of roading for 4 terms at CODC. But like our Southland counterparts, bridges are a major issue with us. We have one of the fastest growing regions in New Zealand. And if you do pay attention to the newspapers, we've got a lot of gold mines, airports, growth, and all those really tricky things. So pay a lot of attention to the road and infrastructure in the future. So that's about me.
Another old hand in this space is Quentin.
G'day, how you going?
We're missing you.
4th term councillor at QLDC. This is my 3rd term on the RTC. And 2nd term as the Deputy Mayor of Queenstown Lakes. Among other things for my sins, I'm on the Regional Deal Committee and the and what was the pay tag last with public transport and active transport governance group in our district with ORC as well. So yeah, I suppose long history of this, and as James knows, we're only about $500 million short at the moment. So we're in transport. So we'll look forward to the term in the RTC.
Thank you. Second time, I think, for Joe Stringer from Gore.
Yeah, morning everyone. Yes, Joe Stringer. 2nd term, been elected to or promoted to Deputy Mayor this time round. Yeah, we've got pretty much the same issues as Southland as well. We've got a few bridge issues, but we've also got the issue of just maintaining what we've got with the funding that we have. Obviously, with inflationary pressure and costs going up, we're getting less bang for our buck. So it's just trying to find ways that we can improve the allocation of resources and where we get our aggregates from, and even around the tendering of our contracts, and if we can work in with neighbouring councils for larger scale and longer terms. Yeah, that's about us.
Thank you. Then I've got from Waitaki, I've got John and Franz. John, what's up with you? Welcome.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. I'm John McCone, 2nd term councillor, Waitaki District Council. We're in the same predicament, I think, as everybody in the room, really. We've got about 7,500 square kilometres of area we cover, of which 10 of those are probably urban, the rest is rural. So the infrastructure running that is quite expensive and quite difficult at the moment.
And Franz?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Franz Slack, I'm the 1st term councillor for Waima Ward for Waitaki District Council. My colleague, Mr. McCann, this morning asked me in the car and said, "You got a lot of questions?" I said, "Absolutely none." I said, "I've come here just to soak it up and learn and see what this is all about." Just in my background, a little bit different than most people, because that's in marine and maritime. as in ports, channels, and that sort of transport. So if I can be of any assistance there, I'm more than happy to help. In the meantime, I'll just sit there and be quiet. Thank you.
And I think, I'm just checking that it's not least, but last, Alistair.
Yeah, second term councillor with Environment Southland. Major interest in the agricultural industry, which integrates directly into the roading system and the odd bridge that needs to take the weight of the machinery or the collection things that are happening within our district. So I'm just a little bit like Francis. I'll just sit down, shut up, and absorb. That's what I've been told in the car on the way up. So we'll do it, John. Thank you.
Very good. James, I'm presuming you don't want to talk twice. You're on two lists. I just checking in. And then I'm going to go to staff. Shall we start with you, Dean, since you're around the table? And then is Russell on?
He should be online.
Thank you.
Kia ora, I'm Dean Larry. I'm the Senior Transport Planner here at ORC. Prior to moving to ORC, I was with Environment Southland for some time, so quite familiar with the Regional Transport Committee and Regional Land Transport Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. But we'll stay with the ORC team. How about that? Starting with Anita, Claire, and I'm sorry, I'm not sure who else is in the room.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Anita Law. I'm the General Manager of Regional Planning at Transport at ORC, here by way of 7 and a bit years working at CODC and for some consultancies in Central, plus 4 years living in Southland. So I've got a reasonably good knowledge of both regions. And apologies, I'll be going in and out today.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Fleur Matthews and I'm the Manager of Policy and Planning at ORC. I'm looking after the transport planning for a bit of time. But like Anita, I've also lived in Southland and Otago, so I'm quite keen to see how this goes. Thanks.
Kia ora koutou. My name is Grace Lawson. I'm a transport planner with the ORC. I'm here to absorb and as well. So,
Thanks, Grace. Doug, since you've been around so long, and then we'll go to Murray.
6.
No, not as long as Murray, sorry, all Russell, yeah.
My name is Doug Rogers. I'm the Strategic Asset Planning Manager for Otago City Council. So I have oversight for Three Waters, transport, property and public transport. I also have Otago and Southland experience. I'm currently living concurrently in both provinces.
Busy. You could make a very bad story out of that, guy. Make comments like that. Murray.
Yeah, I'm Murray Hessner. I'm the Roading Manager at Gore District Council. I've been with Gore District Council on and off for 30 years or something like that. Been involved in roading in all around Southland and in Otago for the last 40 years. This will be my last meeting. Yeah, and I've actually relocated and commuting from Oamaru, where I'm drumming up support for the Southern Waters Done Well for Waitaki to join.
Well, I didn't realise this was going to be last. I knew it was going to happen sometimes soon, but well, yeah, lovely to have you here, Murray. Thank you. Some good wisdom for those in the new to the game. It'd be worth you getting Murray's contacts and understanding the situation from him. Old heads, Russell, where are you? No?
Coming.
There it is.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm a bit of a newbie to this RLTP process, so I'm going to sit here and learn today. It's taken me 3, 4, at least RLTPs to get to the stage that I currently think that I know a wee bit about them, but I generally don't. So I'm the Principal Transport Planner at Environment Southland, and for my sins for the last couple of years have sat beside our chair or the chairs of the RTC. So Unfortunately, an apology for being on site today, but I will be available for any questions that you might have during the day.
And please feel free to interrupt us if you've got comments rather than just answering questions. We do warmly like your contributions. Thanks, Russell. Sorry, I'll go to online. Bryson Huxley.
Hi, Bryson Huxley from Waitaki District Council. I'm the transport engineer for council, and this is probably my first RTC in this region, but I have experience elsewhere, so I'm just here to just listen and see what the discussion is.
Thank you. Paul, while we're doing online.
Morning, everyone. Yeah. Paul Fleet, Rating Manager, CADC. Sorry, I'm just bad echo here, so I might just stop there.
Thank you. We did have two of your names up before, but thank you. We've got Alison.
Good morning. My name's Alison Tomlinson from Queenstown Lakes District Council. I'm the Strategic Asset Manager, so I'm mainly focused on the continuous program, so maintenance, operations and renewals.
Which you make sound very small amount, which I think is probably incorrect. Pierre.
Good morning, Pierre Kortse, Asset Manager, Transportation, Clutha District Council. I am just here this is my first round, and I'm just here to find out what's going on and how it's going, and trying to support Councillor Bruce if he needs it.
Very good. Also from Clutha, I think we've got Sean.
So I'm Sean, Operations Manager at Clutha District Council for rolling, green space and solid waste. Been here for 4 weeks, so I'm still learning the ropes.
And this is the technical advisory group that was running the workshop telling us what's happening, so I'm getting slightly nervous. But there's a few other places and one's names that I should know and names that I've forgotten. So I'm sorry.
Is that on? Kia ora koutou, I'm Leslie McCoy. I've recently joined Environment Southland as the Regional Planner for Transport, working closely with Russell and Dean. I was previously working with Doug at ICC as the Asset Manager of Transport. So I have been to RTC meetings, a couple of RTC meetings in the past, but in a new role.
Thanks, Leslie. And over at that wall there, I'm sorry.
Yeah, g'day. Josh Vandell, Infrastructure Manager for Waitaki District Council.
And thank you.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Liz Debrick. I'm the Regional Planning Manager at Environment Southland, and in my team I've got Russell and Leslie. My past experience, I worked at Council on the planning team for quite some time. Also started out my life as a planner at Waitaki District Council, so have some understanding of both regions.
Excellent, great. Over here.
Simon Spears, Transport Strategy Manager for Dunedin City Council, focusing on planning, road safety and policy mostly. This is my first RTC, so like a few others, I'm here to learn and observe.
Thank you.
I'm Chapman, I'm a Senior Transport Planner at DCC. Involved in this RTC one term, but before that I was involved in the Wellington RTC.
Excellent. Is there anyone else behind Anita that I can't see?
Yes, there are.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Kat, I tried, but they take over me. So I'm Henry van Zyl, also from Gore, part of the riding team, and I'm my succession plan.
Excellent. Anyone else? No. Welcome. That's great. Thank you very much. That gets us through the understanding who everyone is. And then I think we go off to where induction presentation.
Okay.
Thanks, Dean. You're going to lead us through this with maybe some help from Russell and anyone else.
Cool. Thank you.
And the team.
So this induction is intended to give you a brief overview of the statutory framework, the key players and the responsibilities and planning processes that govern land transport some of you will be familiar with some of this content. For others, it will be new to you.
Dean, will you get through all of the slides and then want questions, or can we interrupt you as you go through it? How do you want to run this?
But potentially at the end would be good.
Okay.
Then we can have a bit more of a discussion.
Great, thank you. Just good to have clarification. Right, your questions down, people.
So the items that will be covered today are the Land Transport Management Act, the key organisations involved in the planning process. So that's the Ministry of Transport, the New Zealand Transport Agency, local authorities and regional councils. We'll cover regional transport committees. We'll go over the Regional Land Transport Plan, the role of the government policy statement in transport planning and funding, the associated organisations with the RTC, and other matters such as the planning bill, the proposal of simplifying local government and rates capping. So the Land Transport Management Act is the primary legislation governing how we plan and fund transport in New Zealand. Its core purpose is to provide an effective, efficient and safe transport system while acting in the public interest. So the Land Transport Management Act clearly defines the roles of the Transport Agency as well as regional transport committees. Under the Land Transport Management Act, there are several statutory documents that need to be developed, including the Regional Land Transport Plan. So that serves as the that sets out the regional vision, the region's vision, objectives, and investment priorities. It identifies all the activities of approved organisations seeking funding from the National Land Transport Fund. Below that is the Regional Public Transport Plan. So that serves as the blueprint of how transport services run and how infrastructure is designed, delivered, and managed in regards to public transport. In Otago Regional Council, the Otago Regional Council is responsible for preparing the Regional Public Transport Plan, and in Southland, it is produced by Otago City Council. Moving on to the National Land Transport Program. So it is a 3-year investment program prepared by NZTA, and it prioritises activities to give effect to the government policy statement on land transport. It essentially represents a partnership between NZTA and local authorities. NZTA allocates the funding within the National Land Transport Fund. Moving on to the National Land Transport Fund. So in recent times, it has moved away from strictly a user pays system into more of a hybrid model. While it remains primarily funded through fuel excise duty, road user charges, and vehicle licensing, these revenues are now supplemented by Crown appropriations, including direct grants and loans. This is to bridge the gap between core revenue and planned expenditure. So moving on to the government policy statement on land transport. So that sets out the government's strategic priorities for land transport and essentially acts as the strategic blueprint directing how the National Land Transport Fund is allocated. It influences this through activity classes. These are essentially the funding buckets and the funding ranges for these activity classes. It also determines the shape of the investment prioritisation method that is used by NZTA to rank projects. Generally, when we have a shift in government, we will see a change in the government policy statement for land transport, and that alters these activity classes, funding ranges, and the shape of the investment prioritisation method. So I'll move on to key organisations. So the ministry is government's primary advisor on transport, providing input into policy and providing independent evidence-based advice. It provides leadership and direction to the sector. It monitors the activities of the sector and whether they're achieving the government's outcomes. It also leads the policy and analytical work that enables the Minister to develop a government policy statement on land transport. So moving on to the New Zealand Transport Agency. So NZTA is responsible for planning, design and management of the state highways. At the governance level, the NZTA board holds the responsibility of making decisions in regards to allocating the National Land Transport Fund. NZTA works in close partnership with councils and actively monitors the funding and implementation of projects to ensure they're delivering on desired outcomes. So moving on to local authorities. As you'll be well aware, city and district councils are responsible for planning, design and construction and maintenance of local roading and transport infrastructure. Road controlling authorities develop activity management plans that provide essential data on asset inventory, condition and maintenance needs. This allows authorities to identify what requires renewal or replacement, ensuring the network is managed to provide adequate levels of service for communities. Ultimately, the activity management plans and the evidence base to inform funding requests, and they also influence long-term plans. In their role as road controlling authorities, city and district councils are also responsible for promoting land transport safety through a combination of infrastructure design, local regulation, and community engagement. So in regards to regional councils, they are responsible for the establishment of regional transport committees. They are also responsible for transport planning and management of public transport. This is primarily done through the Regional Land Transport Plan and Regional Public Transport Plans. Okay. Moving on to the responsibilities of the Regional Transport Committees. So the primary function of the Regional Transport Committees is to prepare the Regional Land Transport Plan. Each committee must also adopt a policy that determines significance in respect of variations made to the plan and for the activities that are included in the plan. Beyond planning, the committees are tasked with monitoring the implementation of the Regional Land Transport Plan. So since 2015, the Otago and Southland Regional Transport Committees have held joint meetings to address pan-regional issues. While legally they are two separate entities, they collaborate on transport planning and policy, which creates a unified voice for the Lower South Island. This partnership allows them to develop the Otago Southland Regional Land Transport Plan. So now I'll move on to the Regional Land Transport Plan itself. So as you can see, it is developed every 6 years with a midterm review completed within 6 months of the end of the first 3 years. The current RLTP had its midterm review in 2024. During this time, there were changes in the government and also in the government policy statement, which shifted funding priorities. So currently work is underway on a new draft RLTP. Content is being drafted and staff have started early engagement to inform the front section. This early engagement has centered on the draft vision, objectives, as well as gathering feedback on challenges and opportunities, and further information is included in the agenda item that will be discussed this afternoon. So the draft vision and policies have been refined based on feedback to date. These are expected to undergo further refinement following additional engagement. Also, the objectives will need to be aligned with the transport benefits framework. So essentially, the regional transport plan consists of front and back section. The front section sets out the regional context, the vision, the strategic objectives and investment priorities. The back section sets out the financial information and activities from approved organisations, So this is from the city and district councils, regional councils, NZTA, and the Department of Conservation's program is also included in there. So I will quickly move on to the role of the GPS. So what this diagram does, it essentially pulls everything together and shows the funding for land transport from the National Land Transport Fund, Crown appropriations, and local share. The government policy on land transport directs both the strategic direction and funding. Regional transport committees must create regional land transport plans consistent with the GPS. NZTA aggregates the regional bids into the National Land Transport Program, and that gives effect to the GPS. Now, there are a number of associated organisations with the RTC. So you have the South Island RTC Chairs Group. So its core purpose is to improve transport outcomes across the South Island. The Chairs Group provides a platform to advocate for big picture issues that affect the South Island. The Chairs Group has recently developed South Island Transport Story and the Network Vulnerabilities Report, which has been circulated to RTC members. They have also commissioned the South Island Freight Study. So the Joint Technical Advisory Group, this is made up of transport officers from city and district councils, regional councils, NZTA, and other organisations as appropriate. Our members are sitting around in this meeting today, which is good to see. It advises the Regional Transport Committee on transport matters and supports the preparation of the Regional Land Transport Plan. So more information in regards to the Technical Advisory Group is provided in the Terms of Reference paper that will be covered in this afternoon's meeting. Moving on, we've got the Transport Interest Group. So this is a group of senior transport officers that collaborate regionally and engages with central government to ensure regional perspectives inform decision making. Moving down to the Roading Efficiency Group. So this is a partnership between NZTA, local government NZ, and the road controlling authorities. The Roading Efficiency Group has established the Excellence Program to support best practices in transport planning, asset management, and delivery. It has developed the Transport Insights reporting tool, which includes tools to help monitor RLTPs. So essentially, Transport Insights consolidates roading, financial, and performance information from across the sector, and this provides a comprehensive view of the condition and performance of transport networks. And all of this information is open access, so anyone can access a lot of this information. Really valuable. So moving on, so there has been a couple of changes, proposed changes in regards to legislation that is important to know about. So as you'll be well aware, the Resource Management Act is in a transitional phase. The Planning Bill and the Natural Environment Bill were introduced to Parliament on the 9th of December. As proposed, councils will be required to jointly produce regional spatial plans that cover a 30-year horizon. Part of the purpose of regional spatial plans is to coordinate infrastructure investment across local government, central government, and other providers, and also align development with infrastructure planning and funding. As proposed, the Regional Land Transport Plan will need to be consistent with regional spatial plans. The Minister of Transport will be required to take into account relevant regional spatial plans when preparing the government policy statement on land transport. And as you can see that there. So next is the proposal on simplifying local government. So moving to the broader local government landscape, on the 25th of November, the government released a proposal to simplify the sector. The core of this plan involves abolishing elected regional councils and transferring their functions, including regional transport planning, to combined territorial authority boards. This would be primarily made up of the region's mayors. Combined territorial boards would also be responsible for regional reorganisational plans to improve efficiency. For now, it is important to note that the current framework for the Land Transport Management Act remains unchanged. Our regional transport committees will continue their work as usual.
If we've got regional councillors.
So moving on to rates capping. So this is turning to a major change in council funding. The government has announced a plan to limit annual rates increases to a target range between 2 to 4% per capita. The rates cap covers general rates, targeted rates, and uniform annual charges, but excludes water charges and other non-rates revenue. To go above the 4% limit, councils would need approval from a new central regulator, which will only be granted for exceptional circumstances like natural disasters or to fix proven infrastructure deficit. Legislation is expected this year, which with a transition starting from January 2027 and the model becoming fully operational by July 2029. For councils and transport infrastructure, this proposal represents a move with of course difficult trade-offs. Just before I jump to this one, I thought if there was, I haven't included in the slides, but quickly touch on the National Infrastructure Plan that has just been released, pulling out some key points out of the summaries. So key messages from the summaries includes New Zealand land transport future investment and plans appear to be unsustainable. Benefits of transport projects are often overestimated while costs are underestimated, highlighting the need for stronger independent project appraisals. Investments should shift from new builds to maintenance and renewals. Demand management, such as time of use charging and tolls, should be used to manage congestion instead of relying on expansion and new road construction. Housing density should be concentrated around key transport corridors to maximise the use of existing infrastructure. Low-cost targeted improvements should be prioritised. And investment should increasingly support active modes to reduce emissions. Active modes in public transport, to reduce emissions. All right.
Slightly inconsistent with GPS, that last one, I think.
Yes. So we put up some indicative dates there on the work program for the RLTP. So the intention is in June, there'll be a workshop and meeting that will be held in regards to the draft strategic section. And then the following meeting will finalise that strategic section. In November, we're looking to have the final front section of the RLTP. And then in the new year, we'll be looking to set the priorities on improvement projects within the RLTP. And then we've got approved for consultation and hearings and recommend to council the regional land transport plan. It's important to note that these dates will move, and we've had indication from NZTA about when programs need to be loaded into TO, and they will have a few programs in there. So yeah,
election date is 7th November.
October.
November. Yeah, 7th of November. Yeah, I think so. 7th of November, which makes
so
the 9th an interesting one. We may not know, and that will be how much of a swing there might be in the GPS.
Yes.
Yeah.
That 9th of November is 2026.
Oh, sorry, 7th. Yes, you're right.
Yes, so that.
Yeah, sorry, yes, but the 7th of November 2026 is the election date, and it will have a bearing
So
on
it has
GPS.
to be a typo.
Yeah, there's a typo, but yeah, that one's a typo, but no, it's a. finalising the front section straight on the election may not be the wisest.
Yes.
We may not know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, if we do have a change of government, we could actually have a whole new national policy statement change as well.
Yeah, it may be worth just having some thought about that is what I'm suggesting.
Yes.
At least getting slightly more certainty about who the government might be.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, just thinking about that.
Yeah. That's fine. Yeah, so open to any questions.
Okay, questions or comments from staff, please do participate as much as you can. And if there are no hands up, I will ask 2 questions. One on roads of national significance. When you talk about the funding, are they in or out of that mix? Are they funded out of it or are they separately funded? They're not.
I think as we have our good friends NZT.
So are they funded out of those 4 options that we had up on but they're not funded at all?
If you pull up the slide, I'll talk to it. So I think I can recall that.
It's just interesting. I mean, not that we've got roads of national significance, but when we start talking about equitable funding, it is an important one. There's one of the boxes on it and things. And I think that James wanted to talk to it anyway because there was something about shaking his head at the time.
That's fine.
His body language was
my body language was, I was looking at UK at the time. I mean, look, if I was picking I like the diagram, except I'd have the arrows from funding going into the NLTP, not the GPS, because that's actually where the decisions are taken.
Yeah.
So roads of national significance. Well, I mean, the harsh reality is that the roads of national significance aren't funded.
Yeah.
Yet. We've started minor works on Hawke's Bay Expressway. One of them will come to my mind if I really think hard, but there isn't enough. I mean, the minister's been very clear in speeches he's been giving over the last 6 months that there is not enough money in the system to do all of the work that is asked, of us. And I mean, that's comments that are picked up in the National Infrastructure Plan as well. Yes. by the Infrastructure Commission. So our board can't at the moment, I think, easily approve construction for roads of national significance without a direct conversation with the Crown about that mix between whether something's coming from the National Land Transport Fund or from Crown appropriations, because as Dean said, I mean, about 30% of the funding in the system is now Crown appropriation or Crown loan. We're well past the days where the NLTF funded.
Yeah.
Along with rates, the entire system.
And the reason I should have said the reason I'm asking this question is when you look at the infrastructure plan, which gives some very good leads, I think, and useful leads. Building new roads may not really be the answer, but in order to get any funding in the lower part of the South Island, and we are the small and bottom end of the country, and the least populated and therefore the least interested in an election year, it is really important that we need to have the best business cases. We have to have the best surety of supply of funding from our own sources. We need to have that locked and loaded. You have to have it planned really well and you have to deliver. And that has been a problem. It's always a compelling problem, but if we can become the region or the regions that do that best, we may have some opportunities.
And then while if I may, to be honest, that in my view, from that point of view, the most important thing is the bit on the left, which is difficult to read, but you can just make it out. And that's the cascade from GPS down to NLTP by way of the Regional Land Transport Plan. The RLTP has to be consistent with the government policy statement. And then the funding decisions that we make through the National Land Transport Program have to give effect to the government policy statement. So you're not wrong. You can have, and we need all of those in these regions, but you also need the enabling policy environment that we are required by law to give effect to.
Yeah.
And so being told from a South Island perspective, being told to prioritise the 17 roads of national significance, none of which are in this region, means it's impossible. Even if you had good business casing,
yeah,
it is impossible for us to pursue that.
One can only hope that there'll be a change in the GPS.
Sorry, wrong. I was holding out the wrong document. That one.
Yeah. So the infrastructure strategy is also, the other thing that we've always done is a 3-year cycle, which is particularly unhelpful when it comes to infrastructure. And the infrastructure plan, if I'm right, Dean suggests a 10 and 30-year horizon. Is it straight 30?
What it's looking at, are you talking about the intentions?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's kind of got mapping the way out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's looking at the long term.
Yeah, and the regional land transport plan has been in theory a 10-year, but it really has been only a 3-year plan. And so those are the critical things I think will highlight some of the issues ahead of us. The only roads of national significance in the South Island, I think, are the Ashburton Bridge and Hope bypass.
It's 2 bypasses.
2 bypasses.
Hope bypass and Nelson in Woody bypass, North Branch.
Okay, sorry, apologies. Should get that right. Was South Island chair. Okay, question from Steve.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, thanks for the presentation. I have a few questions here. Excuse me if they're dumb questions, but
Nothing is done today.
tell me about it. And some of them will probably be for you, James, I imagine. So just to clarify, can you just give me a very quick 2 sentences? What's the difference between the 3-year review and the 6-year review?
The GPS may change, and therefore you have to realign. It would be possibly the biggest thing that happened in the last term.
So the 3 years just in there as a sort of safety net,
Yep.
in essence. Okay. Does the RLTP sync with the NLTP in terms of timing?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And I presume just looking through the size, 2027 for us is the key time in terms of getting stuff into the work program. Is that right?
Yeah. So this also syncs with the long-term plans as well. Sorry.
So if Dean pulls up the last slide, which was the date slide, let me just put a bit more colour on that because it's really important. I actually think that's a really useful cascaded date. It reassures me quite strongly, thing. But so yes, we need RLTPs. In fact, we're required to have RLTPs before we build the NLTP. The project can't be funded in the NLTP unless it's in the relevant RLTP. So we have to, the RTC has to build RLTPs first. They're due by 1 July next year. So we are literally recommending their adoption at the latest moment possible. We have to produce the NLTP by 1 September next year. So that's the timing cascade. The only warning I would put on those dates isn't actually the bottom half really. I'm very reassured we're leaving things to the last minute. That's great. All I would say, as I've said in other RTCs in the last fortnight, is just be really careful when we read the words finalise and draft in this, because my gut and experience says everything's live for revisiting until about March next year, because it is an absolute certainty that while we'll come to the GPS, I'm sure, but while we'll get a draft GPS sometime this year, we'll get another draft GPS from the new minister, and it won't be finalised as the operative GPS until about March next year if we're lucky, frankly. So even if we're finalising front sections, we can't adopt an RLTP that's inconsistent with the GPS, of course. So we will have to recheck our working no matter what.
And that is also the long-term plan. I've just got another comment from Janine to help you.
Yeah, so I might just back up what James is saying. From my experience last year, it can get real crunchy. When you're bringing together a 10-year plan and an RLTP, and you're going with the GPS as you know it, and then you get a change. Because then you've got a whole bunch of documents that hang off it, like the infrastructure strategy. So there's a little bit of a moment in time where you have to work very intensely to try and line things up.
The last GPS changed markedly and much more conservatively, and took out probably more things than it added in. This next time, and with the change of minister, we've already seen some changes in that rhetoric. But whether it changes into a GPS and funding, I'm not so sure.
That makes complete sense. This sort of segues into my next question, which will probably make James laugh. The GPS for on land transport, when was it last updated, and is it at the whim of the new government?
So this one, yes, I'm holding the right one. This one was issued by Simeon Brown in the first 6 months of government, really. I mean, and it goes through a public consultation exercise conducted by the ministry. You'd expect exactly the same process from an incoming government, no matter, frankly, the size or shape of that government. That said, the current minister is drafting the next GPS now. So we will go through the process, presumably, of public consultation. The ministry will publicly consult on it sometime. It would be nice to see a draft middle of the year, and then just pick how much it varies post-November based on how much is different post-November from where we stand middle of the year. But so there'll be draft GPSs floating around from mid-year through till this time next year.
And I cannot say enough about the staff's flexibility and ability to ride that staff and NZTA. It was a difficult ride and they excelled. The interesting thing with the infrastructure plan is whether they'll try and be less swingability to that process. I'm not so sure.
So to just surface the biggest problem last time round, and I expect it will be the biggest challenge this time round. The biggest problem is what any draft GPS puts on us in terms of movement of money. Dean said it, but probably just glossed over it in terms of real impact. So the GPS sets those activity classes, those funding buckets, and gives our board the maximum and minimum investment in each of them. Right? If a draft GPS comes along that dramatically shifts where that money lies, it must dramatically change our advice to all of the other road controlling authorities, all the other approved organisations. And most importantly for you all, just because of its impact, if that changes in the continuous program area, so in your maintenance and renewals budgets, that's dramatically out of sync with the careful building of your LTPs and your programs with ours. And so we'll aim to advise you by the end of this year, based on what we know to be true at the time, how much money we think we can give you for your maintenance and renewals in the next cycle. But that can shift dramatically from December to March, and then we're all in catch-up mode in order to adopt something for mid-year. So you've just got to, it gets real from about December.
And Russell would like to comment. Thank you for taking me up on my words, Russell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did say that I wasn't going to butt in, but I think that it's important, the approach that that we have taken with the RLTP over the last two versions, at least as a combined RLTP, was to ensure that that the front end of the document, if you like, was going to enable the road controlling authorities to access funding for the projects that the GPS may subsequently talk about, or the priorities that the GPS may talk about. So rather than, certainly with the big change that there was in the GPS with this, the current GPS, we didn't have to make any significant changes to the front end of the RLTP, because we had used, if you like, terminology that was more general. It wasn't specifically directive, and it allowed the road controlling authorities to load the projects that they wish to do. However, the one that's a little bit more difficult than that is the State Highway Program. And because NZTA, and by default the State Highway Program, there's a road controlling authority, they are slightly different to the territorial authorities. Because they are NZTA, the State Highway Program also has to give effect to the GPS. So that does mean that towards the end of the process, we can end up with the state highway program needing to be changed as a result of the GPS change. And that certainly caused significant issues last time around. And as a result of those significant issues, the timeframes for the development of this current RLTP have been extended by NZTA. And if you like, we're working certainly across the regional sector with NZTA to ensure that the meetings, or at least that the various points can be met to actually meet the NZTA statutory requirements to release the NLTP at the end of August next year. So whilst we will cross some bridges, we will have some difficulties. With any luck at all, as we work through the front end of this document, we will be able to make the document, we want to make the document enabling, so that, for example, if a road controlling authority wishes to put up a walking project or a walking and cycling project or a major road infrastructure project, or in fact significant public transport projects, that the RLTP enables them to do that. Whether the GPS will allow those projects to be funded is another story, and I don't think at this stage we should actually be trying to second guess that. We make sure that the front end of the RLTP enables those projects to be developed and enables them to be set as a priority for the region, and that they then become a signal to the government that these types of projects need to be funded, if not in the next 3 years, but in the following 3 years. So I think that, keep your thoughts about the RLTP as being an enabling document rather than a specifically directive document, so that any work we do now will actually can accommodate any changes that might have to be made as a result of the GPS, in particular with the State Highway Program. And just, I did hear a question before about the difference between a 3-year program and a 6-year program. So the NLT, at least the Land Transport Management Act, says that we develop a 6-year RLTP, and that's what we're in the process of doing this time around. In the midterm, around about 3 years, we have to do a review, and the review is considered to be take account to any major changes that might need to be made, but also it brings in the funding requests for the second 3 years of that RLT, that 6-year RLTP that NZTA then pushed through into the NLTP. So we are in the process of a 6-year document, and I suspect that during the currency of that document, we may see, as Dean highlighted, with potential legislation changes, there might be changes that happen that will affect how things go in the future. But at this stage, think of it as a 6-year document, and it will have 6 years of transport projects in it. 3 years of those transport projects for the first 3 years will be in detail.
Thank you, Russell. Just checking. So very clear message there. So if you want something planned for it, because if you don't plan for it, and the next part of it is if it isn't in your long-term plan with funding, it can't get into the regional land transport plan. I am correct on that, I think.
You are.
I got yes, good.
Absolutely.
Be sad if I was wrong. So if you've got a project, it may not get funding, but that doesn't mean that you don't plan for it. Well.
So on that comment, and this kind of ties up because all of these reforms are all linked, even though Wellington hasn't recognised that. So how do we plan for something in our long-term plan under a rates capping at 2 to 4%? Because even like for our maintenance of our roads, we can't even keep up with it at the moment, let alone new stuff. So there's a break in that because we can't go and...
There's an exception in that rates capping, isn't there?
Yes.
There's an exception
yes.
if there's been a very clear underfunding of infrastructure, And the other part to that is, and you have to be able to tell the story. And imagine that we're all going to have the knives in for previous councils, because that's the only way you're going to get there.
It's a very subjective condition.
Yes. Yeah, and it will be done. But the other part of that is the infrastructure plan, I think, is possibly more helpful. And that there's two parts to this. If we're just telling the story about this government at the moment, if you've got a cycling project that will add to tourism, put it in there. You may not get National Land Transport funding, but you will not get any funding if it isn't in your projects. And as someone who's sitting on a trust separate from this, I can say that we got money for that was because there is a clear link to that story, and the other one is a clear link to resilience. And I think that's the piece that is going to tell the best story for Otago and Southland, especially the bridge repairs and the effect on our freight lines if you don't have those things. So the GPS is particularly unhelpful at the moment for your case, but I don't think that that should stop you planning. What we need to collectively, and probably go harder than we did last time, is start telling that story that if you don't do this investment and allow for these projects as National Land Transport funding, then the story is not going to look that good. So I think that's where we need to be at. Sure. Even if you didn't give your bio, I'll let you ask a question.
Well, several questions actually. How do we get a bigger percentage share from NZTA for our roading authorities, considering my good friend on the right here gets a lot more money than Central Otago District Council? And how do we make our roading budgets work with 2, 4 or a 4% rate rise? Is it not in the best interest to reduce our rate rise to give us more subsidy on the roading?
Put more roads in.
Your part funding.
Yeah, I'm not
Go
sure.
first, go first one first.
I'm not sure if I the second part. First one first. Writ large, you need an enabling GPS that pushes money there. So under this current GPS, it pushed an awful lot more money into maintenance, both state highway and local roads, but not enough money compared to that which you ask for. So actually, you all heard the direction of policy. You all agreed that more money needed to go into maintenance, and you went faster than we were allowed to go, because we have to balance across all of those activity classes. And so almost no council in the country got what they asked for in maintenance renewals last time around. So that's the answer in aggregate. Not wanting to pick between the two of you specifically, but in more general terms between councils, the more general statement is have a good track record of delivery, because we will absolutely, where we can, back programs that deliver versus programs that don't, because we need to keep the money moving in the system. But genuinely fall back to the main position. The GPS has to enable us to go there. If it doesn't, you can demand as much as you like out of us, but we can't do it because we have to give effect to it.
Yeah.
So in effect, though, if we're limited by our rates capping and we're not getting it, we have an infrastructure deficit that keeps going backwards.
Correct.
So we might as well ride around the horse and cart.
Okay, Steve, you had more questions, I think. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. Different speakers to the DCC. These ones are way more efficient. Lots of it's been answered actually, and Russell, your commentary was really, really helpful actually, and it's put a lot of the bits of the jigsaw together for you. So I'm really focusing now on that enabling thing, and I don't know who wants to answer this. Maybe start with you, Kate, in terms of we're all aware of this mass change that's going on. It's sort of a Damocles is hanging over us from so many different directions in terms of what's changing. So in terms of that enabling, it's sort of along the lines of, and I've written here, are we trying to get ahead of the game in terms of being in control of our destiny rather than just banging on about the fact we're getting a rates cap and wherever that looks? Is it in terms of just being ahead of the game so we're slightly more in control of our destiny rather than waiting for somebody to impart what they want on us? So that's a vague question, but do you know what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say?
I have, well, I was going to say something this afternoon. I think as regional transport committees, we have to show that we can plan well. We can fund them through the TAs, and that we've put funding in there and we're prepared to fund them. And then we have to monitor what we're achieving with what we've already got in there. And if we're not achieving it, you really have to say, are you planning well? And if we don't show, and the Achilles heel for us, although I have to say, in many ways, it's easier to deliver down here than, Queensland and Central Otago may be an exception at the moment. And then we have to advocate. Those are the four things that we have to do really, really well. And it's harder when you've got a lower population because it's harder to get time with ministers. It's hard to, and the only thing that we are going to do well is to do this well together. We may have a chance.
And did you have delivery on that? Because I liked your comment about, is it yours, Jane? A good record of delivery must be fundamental.
And that's monitoring the delivery. If we're not delivering, and you'll see that later on, and it looks nervous for some of you are doing really well, there is a disparity. And then it's telling that story well. If you're not delivering, why not? And there will be a good story there, but we have to make sure that we're doing that well. Russell would also like to talk after you, James.
So one other aspect I'll pick up, recognising that I'm focusing now on the new stuff more than I am on the maintenance of what we've got, and that actually that's the opposite of the advice that the State Commission is giving us. Focus on what we've got, not the new stuff. Sure. But when I talk to councils about significant new improvement projects, ambitions that they've got for their network, I think the best frame of mind you can get into, totally bound by the current constraints that are heading down the pipe at you, and they are very difficult to manage, don't get me wrong. I think you have to be prepared to invest more early, at relatively speaking, the cheaper end of the project, in order to get the investment later, right? It is perfectly possible, plenty of councils do, that you sit waiting for the enabling policy environment until you get subsidy to do the first indicative business case and work your way through the business casing process. That will take you a lot longer than being prepared to invest more, probably unsubsidised, early to work out whether the idea is a good idea, park it until there is an enabling central government policy environment, and then you can pick it up and go. That's to say, in my experience, regions do generally better if they've got a reasonable amount of stuff in the drawer, and then they pick from amongst that to match the enabling policy environment at the right time.
That's political consequences, isn't
It sure does, but it is in the life cycle of a major transport project, it is cheaper at the business case end, right? So your return on investment is much higher if you've got a good business case ready to go, rather than waiting and losing 5 years of investment.
Shovel ready has been the term that every government has liked.
Really trying hard not to use that term.
But they all love it. Russell and then Stuart.
So the argument to that against is that when we were trying to do that, we got rates capping, or we got hammered because of rates, because we're investing in the future. Yeah. So
Russell, and then
yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I think that the comments that James has just made are actually really, really important, and I don't want to be sheeting the work back from the RTC, but the most important document that is developed by a road controlling authority, and although the state highways don't call it their activity management plan, I think they use the term SHIP, and that might be because it's very difficult to change the direction of a ship quickly, but it seems to happen. But really, the activity management plans that each of the road controlling authorities produce are the most significant and the most important document that you can produce, because that tells the story of why the investment in whether it be in maintenance and renewals or in capital projects or in bridges, etc. If that story is well told in the activity management plan, then it's easy for us, the regional sector, preparing an RLTP, to transfer that through into the comments in the RLTP. And it's easy then for NZTA to look and say, when they are assessing a road controlling authority's request for funding, particularly in the maintenance and renewals area, if the story is appropriate and the story is well told, then the chances are you are going to get a lot closer either to the figure that that the activity management plan actually indicates is needed, or alternatively, you will be, if the GPS results in a general reduction of maintenance and renewals across the country, you will be the one that gets the highest or the best return out of your request. So I think that really make sure that you, within your own councils, that you're actually focusing on those activity management plans and the story that they are telling, and the reasons why you need to have this investment. And I think that it's right to have been able to go one step further and to say, particularly with a major project, if you've got one, or even one that just sits outside of the low cost, low risk area, or if you want to do so, be a project that's within the current $2 million of low cost, low risk, a business case, developing that at this early stage so that it supports your bid at the early stage, rather than saying, we think this is a good project, we want funding so that we can go ahead and develop the business case, which means that it'll be 3 years down the track and probably potentially 2 GPSs before you actually are lining up for funding. So concentrate on your activity management plans and the story that that's telling as a first step.
Thank you. Murray.
Yeah, the other issue that we had is the GPS activity classes, which changed hugely in the last round, with the change of government. So the big casualty there, and it's been a common thread throughout this morning's meeting, is bridges, the problem with bridges. So bridges became a second class work category when it got shifted to the local road and probably state highway activity operations activity class, rather than being in the pothole prevention class, which is the first class in terms of achieving funding. So to me, the Regional Transport Committee should be putting a huge effort into, particularly down here and probably around the rest of the country, into getting that addressed, and getting, if they're going to still have those activity classes that we've currently got, we need to get the bridges, both maintenance and renewals, shifted into the first class funding area, the pothole prevention fund. And to me, that should be is one of the most critical things that we need to do to address the issue that we've all been talking about this morning.
Thank you. I've got Stu for a question or a comment, and then Rob.
With the regional management plan, how does the regional deals work? So why have we got a regional deal when it comes to infrastructure and roading?
I know us.
Hey?
I know us. We're not wrong.
But then when they're having those discussions, it's talking about having transport systems more efficient and effective in our regional deal, but it can't be, because it's got to come through the process which we're working in here.
I think we may be seeking some advice from some colleagues for his presentation this afternoon, maybe. No, it's not a space, but it's again one of those comments that we can probably have to consider.
Well, when Internal Affairs came and talked to us, roading and traffic management and speeding up infrastructure was, and I'm going, well, it can't. It's got to come through the system and be in a regional plan. But it seemed to have.
But I think it's that other funding. It's going to be that other funding model that putting something up there and maybe getting something out.
And that's not coming from us.
No. But Rob.
So
So thanks. Russell kind of touched on a bit of what I was going to say, because the long-term plan isn't a story, it's a budget. And if we're trying to tell a story in a long-term plan, then we're doing a disservice to our ratepayers because we're not actually going to achieve those targets. But the asset management plan, I think, is the part to do the story. And I'm hoping that that actually is the bit that features in the RTP rather than the long-term, well, in conjunction with the long-term plan. But we're doing a big focus at the moment on asset management planning to get that story right, because that's the tool separate from your actual budget. Because the budget is it's a sad story because that's the bit that we can't actually afford to do. But it's to James's point, we don't have magic pools of money to go and start a project on the off chance that the government might pick it up and the policy changes. Like, the reality for us is, particularly in Southland District, it's a real challenge. And I've got the man next to me here that delivers 99% of the roading program. He runs a really good ship, and we still struggle to actually get the funding with a really good story. I've shared it enough times with you, James, and the politicians, but Hartley just reminded me before, like, to meet the 2% target of the GPS for the rehab, it's $100 million over 3 years. We're only got 18. That's quite a gap. And if we get rates capping put in on top of that, that gap's only going to get bigger, and that story is only going to get sadder. And how do we encapsulate that at an early enough stage? Because all of these different plans going everywhere, we've got to get that message loud and clear to front foot it as much as possible, but I can't see it happening.
Well, there's two parts to that. One is we have to be ready for the rate capping bill. When it comes in, make comment about the longevity of the life and depreciation. So the capping may be by borrowing, that you can get within the capping if you borrow and depreciate. How they're going to deal with that. I think the one thing we never talk about around this, we talk about our delivery to the extent of how we are spending our money that we have allocated. I do wonder if there is a piece on being much cleverer about working with the industry to have a flow path. Now, those of us who went to the opening of the Beaumont Bridge, where one of the big costs there must have been the flying in and flying out and everything else of the people. If we've got a whole lot of bridges coming on, how do we work with the industry to sharpen the pencil to make a sensible investment locally in that? And I don't know if there's a piece there or not, and I'm looking for someone who might give us some direction there, cleverer than myself, but there must be something we can do better with industry. And that's where we aren't using our collective arms as well as I think we could, but I may be wrong. And I'm not taking away from what the wonderful work that Hartley does. And I have to say that we're using him as Southland example because he is doing such a good job in delivery. But whether we need to get the industry to do better, I don't know. So Stu,
the only other thing I had written down on my list was does the roading efficiency group, what does it achieve and has it achieved its goals? Because that's a classic example where the efficiency we're getting, and are we just getting picked off region by region, bit by bit? I mean, I don't know how you measure it, but as your example of Beaumont Bridge a classic, could it be done more efficient?
I'm going to ask James to make some comments on that, and then I've got Joe.
Yeah, look, I've talked about the efficiency last term. You need to start standardizing. You also need to have the work schedule set that those guys that are building those bridges like Beaumont can go straight on to the next project, because I know a couple of the engineers and workers from that project that had nothing else in the pipeline after that and have just gone. Some of them have gone overseas, so you lose that knowledge and you also lose that momentum. I personally run a telecommunications network across Otago, Southland and into Canterbury. We're used to deploying towers, so I would think that the roading situation, they could do bridges along the same sort of line, whereas you hold a lot of default components in stock, so you can just go out and base template all the time instead of having a bespoke bridge for every situation. Cool, if you need to move your buttress back another 5 meters into the bank, just do it, and have all your spans the same, and just have precast operators going around the clock if need be to build up a inventory of bridge components and sections that any contractor can come along and pick up and go out and deploy. And it also then builds your resilience to these situations like they have in the North Island after hurricanes and floods, that you can just, okay, we've had a bridge lose sections, cool,
pop down to the local storage depot, pick the parts up and go out and start redeploying. Yes, it might cost you a bit more up front, but in the long term, you're reducing your costs and you're increasing your resiliency.
Thanks, Joe. We are listening. James, do you want to say anything before I might want to ask Hartley what he has said?
I need to be really clear, just because I may have misinterpreted a comment from we're wrong, but just there shouldn't be all these different plans in the transport space. I get there's an awful lot written and said, but from a strict documentation point of view, this should all line up. Your asset management plans built to your long-term plan, goes into your RLTP, and goes on to the NLTP. They should all contain the same workflow. You know, it starts back at that asset management plan. Get that right. And I absolutely get that there are then external constraints on that system, and particularly understanding what particular external constraint rates capping will impose is really important. But from the early indications I've seen, if your AMP is okay, you ought to be able to justify the spend. Not that there aren't other constraints on that revenue and that spend, but the theory of the system is as much stress as we put on that system, trying to make it, it's still a relatively mechanical system in terms of stepping through the planning process and justification process. So it shouldn't be at odds with itself, but come back to at the end of that system, if you want funding from us, we need the enabling GPS to do it. And so there's an awful lot of work around this table, collectively as a table, but then all in your individual roles, advocating for that enabling policy environment, because without it,
infrastructure funded with council bonds or something like that, we can need a new tool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Hartley, I really, I hope you didn't take any criticism when I suggested. I know Hartley's done a lot of work on this, and I think it would be really helpful for him to be able to explain the frustrations and the difficulty getting over the line when you are even trying to do the bridges stuff.
Yeah, thank you very much. There's probably a few comments that or questions and points raised that I might comment on.
Yeah.
I'll start with the bridge one for a start. Yeah, I think from and some of the points, Jerry, there's standardization. I think that's how we've managed to deliver, particularly our smaller structures that are just standard off the shelf designs. So allowing the contractors to use off the shelf products has definitely helped us deliver on our program. But we do have to recognise there will be scenarios where off the shelf isn't appropriate, and we ourselves have a couple of those. But the biggest constraint, I'd almost say, is the long-term investment and surety around being able to program, plan, and deliver. We've hit that twice in the last 6 years where you end up with effectively losing a year because of change in process or change in requirement, and that just slows the program up. Infrastructure Commission's highlighted the issue around 3-year funding and not 10-year funding. I suppose certainty, particularly around your renewal and maintenance, those continuous programs, just looking after what you have. At the moment, the system's 3 years, unfortunately, but yeah, the 10-year would definitely, I think, alleviate some of those issues where you can plan and deliver and have longer-term contracts or surety, at least a pipeline of work for contractors that they don't go overseas or leave, even it's not even going overseas in some cases, just leaving the region and being able to get them back into a particular region to deliver. So yeah, some of it we can control, and some of it's unfortunately probably outside our control, where we more have to advocate for change. The other point, just I suppose around the road efficiency group comment is, I think if you look, there's some of the tools that is mentioned in the report, so I won't get ahead in terms of like the insights reporting around how you can see how regions, etc. That's probably a good example of where the road efficiency group has delivered on. But also, if you go back probably 10 years ago, around the quality of activity plans, where there's quite a variety across the country, they're all sitting now in a fit for purpose and get nationally effectively peer reviewed. So that's markedly put at least the transport sector ahead of some of the other sectors that local government deals with in terms of infrastructure. So yeah, I think that from that point of view, there's still always things to do, but there's been quite a marked shift across the industry, even standardization of what we call in terms of road classifications 10 years or more ago, probably 12 years ago. Every road controlling authority probably had a different name for a similar type of road. That's all standardized because of the road efficiency group. So probably the key. I think I've covered all, but if there's something
I think it's a real opportunity for us to all understand some of that when it comes to the submissions on some of the legislation and coming through, to make sure that we're consistently saying don't change everything that slows down the progress we are making as well. Because I think sometimes we forget how tough that is on the staff. Steve.
Just press it again. Yeah, this is really interesting and really useful, actually. A great discussion. Listen, this is more a commentary, Madam Chair. If you
I'm very lenient on these things.
Listen, I think you said we could do things better, but I agree, actually, that politics gets in the way. And James, everything should line up. And again, politics does get in the way. And you just said 10 years is better than 3. I'd actually argue you should go way more than 10 years. No, I'd say 100 actually, I'll come on to that. Listen, the nirvana for bridges and by extension, national infrastructure, and James and myself spoke about this while swearing a lot before we came in the room, and I've always thought it should be in the same box as education and healthcare in this country. The problem is we have politics banging in the way. We don't have 100-year plans. We don't have 100-year set non-touchable investment that can be accessed. So as I said to you earlier, the Nelson Hospital should already be planned within that 100 years in 3 years' time. And already in that plan for 2070, we should have the New Dunedin Hospital again. And that money should be like a super fund that's not touchable. And my dream, this is my dream, and it's not anomalous because they do it in other places. They do it in China. They do it in Finland. They do it in Norway. So let's remember, we're not going to reinvent the wheel here, but it can be done because it's done elsewhere. Until we change what we've got at the moment, whether you like it or not, James, you're going to be having this frustrating conversation ad infinitum, aren't you? Unless things systemically change in the way we fund and do things. And that's why I worry when we ask for 10 years, we should ask for much more. There needs to be a 100-year program. The thing you show me of bridges is you should show that. It's terrifying. We'll do
Someone's seen it before.
We'll do nothing about that unless we decide to change. And and also back all your comments about the problems we have setting our plans for this. Okay? It's impossible. Literally.
Phil's next. Okay.
Well, that discussion leads into the part that came up there called the proposal of local government. If you take exactly what we're talking about of borrowing, because at 2% rates, you cannot do infrastructure. Just forget about it. We might as well plant in the kindergarten. So therefore, borrowing has to be the only way to invest in infrastructure. Now, as we're seeing, is possibly our boundaries should be bigger, and does this group become the borrowing mechanism for the infrastructure change in the next 100 years? Otherwise, we don't know what the unitary authorities are going to look like.
I certainly think we've got the way we organise local government, and I've given, and the Otago Regional Council has given the regional transport committees as a really interesting model of looking about how we work and collaborate better. But I'm not going to go quite that far today.
So, but we've got at the end of the day, in 2 years' time, there isn't a regional council.
Yes.
But we're making decisions on a long-term infrastructure planning, or talking about that, having discussions about that. Like we're going round and round it. We're not going to get anywhere.
Well, I think we will get somewhere, and I'm going to let Phil talk, and then I'm going to just wrap up where I think we need to go in the next part of the afternoon after you've been fed. Phil.
Thank you. No, I was just going to say thank you, Dean, for the overview, the introduction briefing. And I was just going to observe, because I feel the pain of people who are sitting at this table for the first time and getting their head around what does all this mean? How does it work? What the hell's going on here? And what you've outlined is a system that is heavily reliant on planning and capable planning and agile planning, because it's those plans that deliver outcomes. And I'm just going to observe the GPS effect. When the GPS changes and classifications change, there is a flow-on effect for delivery. And we've seen, Hartley will speak to that. When you lose a year, despite how agile your planning teams are, your still delivery will suffer, and ratepayers and constituents will suffer. So it is really really important to understand that planning is really, really critical, and the better we can be at planning, that's awesome. But still, sometimes things will trump the ability of our regional planning staff, and we just have to understand how that's going to bite us, while we at the same time striving for that better system we want to build for the future.
James.
I know you want to move on. Yeah, I just
No, this is useful.
Look, I've thrown up on the screen.
Yes.
So how about I explain what I've thrown up on the screen just to stir the pot a little bit further. So every orange dot on that page, and it's a little difficult to see if you're a long way away from it, you can see the overall effect. That's a structure. That's a state highway structure in the South Island. It's only South Island structures. I could do it for North Island, but I've only done it for South Island. The bottom axis is year that it was constructed. So it runs from 1850 on the far left, and I did this 2 years ago, so it peters out just after the 2020s. And length is your y-axis. Now, I was wrong when I spoke to you, Steve, earlier. That the Rakaia Bridge is the one thing that isn't on there because it's constructed about 1939, but it would take it would double the y-axis because it's just under 2 k's long. And age of structure is not a one-for-one of condition, but it's a pretty damn good indicator of cost and likely need to replace soon. And I just would observe this as I was observing for Steve earlier and have observed others in the past. We are just beginning to hit at 100 years old the first wave of big building of current assets. Yes, we built assets we've taken out, but we're just hitting the first of these bumps. What's coming? We're all grappling with structures and bridges, and I totally want to acknowledge that, yes, this GPS made it even harder to grapple with, and Phil's calling you absolutely right. You lose years in just trying to get to grips with the new system, right? And what's hot. But I am absolutely certain we'll all be talking about structures. I just want you to see this is the state highway chunk that we've got coming. It is massive. It's more common than that. But
Okay, Steve, I'm going to give you a quick second.
Well, yeah, it's a very brief question. And I'm very lucky to be sitting next to Janine, who just sent me the DCC's Transport Activity Management Plan. My question is, does every council, are they required statutorily to have one? They are
built into your
It's a bit built into the whole process.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't mean it has to be good though.
Sorry, I think if we listen to Hartley, they are becoming more consistent and more,
especially in transport.
in
transport they're pretty consistent.
Yes, I age in council days where they were poor. I just want to reflect on that bridge one, because also in that dynamic, and we often sit around here and think about the age being their limit. The one-way bridges on that network is scary, because we've now got a whole lot of tourists who do not understand what that looks like at all when they come across them, and we've now got machinery, both farm and freight, that is much, much heavier than expected, and when those were ever first designed. Some of them, where is the 1860 bridge? Sorry.
I confess I don't actually know. I suspect it's actually in Southland. But
yeah,
it will be.
It is really, really scary to see that. It's been a sobering morning, and look, the clarity of the questions, especially from the newbies, thank you. It shows that you're really up and read your papers and understand where we're going. The challenge this afternoon is, and it's something that our chair, the regional council, said, how do we become the best regional transport committee that we can show the way, not be limited necessarily by what we have to do, but by starting to put in the 10-year or the 100-year or the 20 even. 30 would be great, that we can actually start making sure that the activity management plans are not only flexible, and will fill those gaps, whatever the GPS says, but can get that story to allow the investment and then deliver that investment with the industry as best as we can to get the roading network that we know that drives the country. And we've heard it time and time again. Our Prime Minister has told us that we Otago and Southland are really helping the country, and yet we're not getting that investment. And they can't see the shortfalls in that. So it is, storytelling is an art, and it's not something that I'm great at, but we need to empower the staff to tell that story by providing them time to plan and challenge them to think as hard as they can about that. Thank you all. Thank you, especially Dean and Russell, who have put that presentation together this morning and sparked that debate and discussion and great questions. This afternoon, we're going to the formal meeting. The karakia will carry over until that this afternoon. Please make time, especially those that didn't circulate their bios, to make sure that you talk both to staff and to other councillors. So the more we are familiar with the concerns and issues in your area, the better the decision making and the opportunities will be as we develop the regional land transport plan. We're coming back, is it 12:30? So we've got 23 minutes for lunch. Okay, so please, if you're going to get a coffee, great cafe